Number 1. The Icebound Hospital, Haines' Forgotten Ward. Hidden in the outskirts of Haines lies the remains of an old hospital, long abandoned and overtaken by snow and frost. Locals call it the Icebound Hospital and whisper that the spirits of patients and doctors trapped within still roam the empty hallways seeking relief that never comes. The story begins in 1939 when a typhoid outbreak overwhelmed the small facility. Doctors and nurses worked tirelessly, many falling ill themselves. During a particularly fierce winter, a patient mysteriously disappeared from his room. Staff searched the hallways only to find his bed neatly made and a strange cold draft lingering in the room. Soon after, more patients vanished, leaving the corridors eerily silent except for faint coughings, murmurs, and footsteps that echoed through the empty wards. Visitors to the hospital report the same chilling experiences: doors that open and close on their own, medical equipment activating seemingly by itself, and shadows that move at the edge of sight. Some hear the distant wails of patients calling for help, while others see fleeting figures standing at the end of hallways, staring with hollow eyes before vanishing into walls of frost. In 1978, a local photographer decided to document the hospital at night. He reported feeling icy hands brush his arms and heard whispers repeating his own name. When he turned, a shadowy figure in a nurse's uniform drifted past, holding a tray of instruments that glinted in the moonlight. By dawn, the photographer emerged, pale and trembling, claiming that the hospital seemed alive, its hallways stretching farther than they should, doors leading to rooms that did not exist. Locals warned that the icebound hospital traps anyone who enters after dark. The spirits inside are not malevolent in the traditional sense. They are desperate, forever reliving moments of pain, fear, and care. Those who linger risk becoming part of its frozen ward, trapped in the hospital's corridors for eternity. Even now, on snow-covered nights, hikers and explorers report seeing dim lights in the hospital windows and hear faint footsteps echoing across the icy floors. Some swear they've seen figures at the windows, silently beckoning. If you ever find yourself near the icebound hospital in Haines, do not enter. Do not follow the lights. Because the wards are eternal, and some who enter the icebound hospital never leave.
Number 2. The Phantom Wolves, Haines' Howling Night. Deep in the forests surrounding Haines, locals tell of a pack of spectral wolves, known as the Phantom Wolves, that roam the woods on the coldest nights. Unlike ordinary wolves, these are silent hunters, their glowing eyes appearing suddenly, then vanishing, leaving an icy chill in their wake. The legend dates back to the early 1900s, when trappers reported strange incidents in the wilderness. Entire campsites would be found abandoned, food gone, gear scattered, but no tracks in the snow. At night, travelers claim to hear distant howls, not quite wolves, that carry messages of warning or doom. Some say the wolves can mimic human voices, luring wanderers into the deep forest. In 1947, a hunting party entered the woods during a heavy snowfall. That evening, the pack appeared, circling silently at the edge of their camp. The hunters swore that the wolves' eyes glowed like lanterns, and each time they tried to leave, the paths seemed to twist back toward the wolves. One hunter disappeared entirely, and the rest fled, hearing faint, mocking howls that followed them back to town. Eyewitnesses report that the phantom wolves do not behave like normal animals. They move in perfect coordination, appearing and disappearing at will, their howls carrying an unnatural echo. Some hikers swear the wolves can mimic footsteps, laughter, or cries, drawing you toward danger while they remain unseen. Those who hear them for too long feel a creeping dread, as if the forest itself is watching and waiting. Locals warn, if you hear the eerie howls near Haines, do not investigate, do not respond, do not move toward the sound. The phantom wolves are patient, and some who follow the calls vanish without a trace. Even today, hunters and hikers report glowing eyes watching from the tree line, faint howls echoing in the night, and the unsettling feeling of being hunted by something that should not exist. If you ever walk the forests around Haines after dark and hear distant howls, remember, some predators are not of this world, and the phantom wolves are always hungry for lost souls.
Number 3. The Lighthouse Fog. Haines' Eternal Mist. Along the rugged coast of Haines, sailors and fishermen speak in hushed tones about a strange, unnatural fog that rolls in from the sea, known as the Lighthouse Fog. It's said that those who encounter it at night never navigate the waters the same way again. Some vanish entirely, while others return with stories of shadows and whispers. The story begins in 1923, when the lighthouse on Sentinel Point guided ships safely into the harbor. One stormy night, a fishing vessel entered the bay, but vanished in thick fog, despite the lighthouse beacon being lit. No wreckage was found, and only a faint glimmer of the ship was reported by others far off the coast. Since then, mariners claim that the fog returns without warning, thick and white, swallowing everything in its path. Fishermen report seeing strange shapes within the mist, ghostly sailors rowing through the fog, lanterns floating in the water, and shadows standing along the cliffs. Some hear whispers echoing their names or mocking their past mistakes. Sailors who attempt to steer through the fog at night say the compass spins wildly, instruments fail, and time seems to stretch unnaturally, hours passing as if minutes. In 1961, a small fishing crew decided to brave the fog to test the legend. As they entered, the beacon seemed to flicker oddly, and the mist thickened. One crew member claimed to see a pale figure on the bow, pointing silently toward open water. When they attempted to turn the boat, it seemed to resist, as if something unseen guided them deeper into the fog. Hours later, they returned to shore trembling. Their watches stopped at exactly 2:47 a.m., and their memories of what occurred inside the fog were fragmented and terrifying. Locals believe the lighthouse fog is a curse tied to the waters and the old lighthouse, a force that traps lost souls and relives tragedies of the past. Those caught in it are never fully gone, but forever wandering in the spectral mist, hearing faint echoes of the living world while unable to return. Even today, on calm nights, mariners report fog rolling in suddenly and the lighthouse beam flickering without reason. Shadows shift within the mist, and whispers carry across the water, beckoning any who listen too closely. If you are ever on Haines Coast after dark and see the fog creeping in, do not venture into it. Do not chase the lights, because the lighthouse fog waits, patient and eternal, and some who enter the mist never find their way back. Number 4. The Lighthouse Fog. Haines' Eternal Mist. Along the rugged coast of Haines, sailors and fishermen speak in hushed tones about a strange, unnatural fog that rolls in from the sea, known as the Lighthouse Fog. It's said that those who encounter it at night never navigate the waters the same way again. Some vanish entirely, while others return with stories of shadows and whispers. The story begins in 1923, when the lighthouse on Sentinel Point guided ships safely into the harbor. One stormy night, a fishing vessel entered the bay but vanished in thick fog, despite the lighthouse beacon being lit. No wreckage was found, and only a faint glimmer of the ship was reported by others far off the coast.
Since then, mariners claim that the fog returns without warning, thick and white, swallowing everything in its path. Fishermen report seeing strange shapes within the mist, ghostly sailors rowing through the fog, lanterns floating in the water, and shadows standing along the cliffs. Some hear whispers echoing their names or mocking their past mistakes. Sailors who attempt to steer through the fog at night say the compass spins wildly, instruments fail, and time seems to stretch unnaturally, hours passing as if minutes. In 1961, a small fishing crew decided to brave the fog to test the legend. As they entered, the beacon seemed to flicker oddly, and the mist thickened. One crew member claimed to see a pale figure on the bow, pointing silently toward open water. When they attempted to turn the boat, it seemed to resist, as if something unseen guided them deeper into the fog. Hours later they returned to shore, trembling. Their watches stopped at exactly 2:47 a.m., and their memories of what occurred inside the fog were fragmented and terrifying. Locals believe the lighthouse fog is a curse tied to the waters and the old lighthouse, a force that traps lost souls and relives tragedies of the past. Those caught in it are never fully gone, but forever wandering in the spectral mist, hearing faint echoes of the living world while unable to return. Even today, on calm nights, mariners report fog rolling in suddenly and the lighthouse beam flickering without reason. Shadows shift within the mist, and whispers carry across the water, beckoning any who listen too closely. If you are ever on Haines Coast after dark and see the fog creeping in, do not venture into it. Do not chase the lights, because the lighthouse fog waits, patient and eternal, and some who enter the mist never find their way back.
Number 5. The Abandoned Cannery, Haines' Silent Factory. On the outskirts of Haines, perched by the edge of the frozen inlet, lies an old cannery that has been abandoned for decades. Locals call it the Abandoned Cannery and whisper that the spirits of workers who perished there still haunt its rusted halls, forever trapped in the machinery they once operated. The story begins in 1931, when a sudden fire swept through the cannery during a harsh winter storm. Several workers vanished in the chaos, their screams echoing across the water. The building was rebuilt, but strange accidents continued to occur. Workers reported hearing footsteps and voices when no one was present, machinery operating on its own, and shadows that moved independently of the light. By the 1960s, the cannery was permanently shut down, but locals claim the hauntings never stopped. Fishermen and travelers report seeing lights flickering inside the dark building at night, as if the machines are still running. Some hear the clanging of metal, the hiss of steam, and the muffled cries of people calling for help. Others claim to see shadowy figures moving between rusted conveyor belts, sometimes gesturing toward the docks as if warning of unseen danger. In 1987, a group of urban explorers entered the cannery to document it. As they walked through the main floor, the temperature plummeted, and the machinery groaned as if powered by invisible hands. One explorer felt a cold grip on his arm and spun around. Nothing was there. At the far end, he saw a figure in torn work clothes staring silently at him. When he blinked, it had vanished, leaving only a wet footprint in the dust. By dawn, the explorers fled, shaken and pale, claiming that the building seemed to stretch and shift, corridors opening where none had existed before. Locals warn, the abandoned cannery doesn't just house ghosts, it traps anyone who lingers too long, feeding on fear and curiosity. Some say that those who hear the machinery at night are hearing the workers' final moments replayed, a continuous loop of pain and panic. Even today, fishermen report faint lantern lights moving through the windows, accompanied by the distant clang of metal and the echo of unseen voices. Some swear that if you listen closely, the whispers will call your name, coaxing you to enter, never to return. If you ever pass by the abandoned cannery at night, do not investigate. Do not approach the docks, because the spirits inside remain, and some who enter the abandoned cannery become part of the machinery forever.
Number 6. The Crying Lighthouse, Haynes' Sorrowful Beacon. Perched atop the jagged cliffs of Haynes, a small lighthouse has long been abandoned, yet locals say its light still flickers on stormy nights. They call it the Crying Lighthouse and claim the ghost of its last keeper wanders the cliffs, mourning a tragedy that never ended. The story begins in 1914 when the lighthouse keeper, Marion Thompson, lost her husband at sea during a violent winter storm. Grief-stricken, she spent her nights scanning the horizon for his ship, refusing to leave the lighthouse even as the winds battered the cliffs. One night, after a particularly fierce storm, she vanished without a trace. Fishermen claimed that the light shone brighter than ever and that faint sobs echoed across the water. Over the decades, travelers report strange occurrences near the lighthouse. Some see a shadowy figure pacing the cliffs, lantern in hand, scanning the waves. Others hear whispers carried by the wind, repeating phrases like, "Come back, don't leave me." Fishermen claim that boats approaching the cliffs feel inexplicable currents pushing them toward the rocks, as if guided by the keeper's sorrow. In 1969, a group of explorers attempted to spend a night in the lighthouse. The air grew colder as darkness fell, and the wooden floors creaked under invisible weight. One explorer reported hearing footsteps following him, and when he looked out the window he saw a figure in a pale dress standing atop the cliffs, lantern flickering. When he blinked, the figure vanished, leaving a cold mist behind. Throughout the night, doors slammed, and faint sobs echoed through the halls. By morning, the explorers fled, their faces pale, claiming that the lighthouse seemed to breathe, alive with grief. Locals warn, the Crying Lighthouse does not just mourn, it seeks companionship in sorrow. Those who linger too long risk being drawn into Marion's endless vigil, lost to the cliffs and waves forever. Even today, on stormy nights, fishermen and hikers report seeing the light flicker without reason, accompanied by faint crying and the rustle of unseen footsteps. Some swear that if you stare too long, the lantern swings towards you, beckoning. If you ever approach the cliffs near Haynes after dark, do not climb, do not follow the light, because the Crying Lighthouse waits patiently, and some who answer its call never return to the shore.
Number 7. The Haunted Train Tracks, Haynes' Lost Passengers. Outside of Haynes, an old railroad track winds through the dense forests and frozen valleys, long abandoned but still etched into the landscape. Locals call it the Haunted Train Tracks, claiming that ghostly trains run along it at night, carrying passengers who vanished decades ago. The legend began in 1929 when a passenger train derailed in a sudden winter storm. Several cars tumbled into the icy river and dozens of passengers were lost. Though some bodies were recovered, many disappeared entirely, leaving the wreck site eerily silent. Over the years, travelers began reporting strange occurrences, the sound of wheels crunching on gravel where no tracks remain, faint train whistles carried by the wind, and shadowy figures glimpsed through the trees waving desperately.
In 1965, a group of teenagers decided to explore the tracks at night. As they walked, they heard rhythmic clanking, like a train moving towards them. They saw dim lights in the distance, accompanied by faint voices calling names they recognized from town records. One teen ran forward trying to see the train and vanished without a trace. The others fled, hearing the sound of the train receding into the forest, only to find their own footprints leading back in circles, as if the tracks had twisted around them. Locals insist that the haunted train tracks are cursed, carrying the lost passengers endlessly along the route they never completed in life. Some who wander near the tracks report fleeting glimpses of shadowy travelers sitting on invisible seats or ghostly conductors waving through the snow. Others hear whispers promising warmth and shelter, but anyone who follows them may never return. Even today, hikers and drivers report seeing faint lights along the old tracks at night, hearing train whistles that vanish suddenly, and glimpsing shadowy figures staring from the tree line. Some claim the spirits are patient, appearing only when the moon is hidden behind clouds, silently beckoning travelers closer. If you ever walk near the old railroad in Haines after dark, beware. Do not chase the lights. Do not follow the sounds, because the haunted train tracks carry the lost, and some who step onto the path are never seen again. Number 8. The Shivering Cabin, Haines Winter Prison. Deep in the forests surrounding Haines, hidden beneath layers of snow and ice, there's a small, decrepit cabin that locals call the Shivering Cabin. It is said that anyone who enters during a winter night never emerges the same. Some are driven mad, others disappear completely. The story begins in 1936 when a trapper named Elias Hawthorne sought shelter from a blizzard. He was never seen again, though footprints led straight to the cabin. Over the following winters, hikers reported glimpsing a faint glow inside the cabin's windows, but the door always remained closed, frozen shut. Some say they can hear the creak of the old door opening, even when no one is nearby. Those who venture inside the shivering cabin report immediate and unnatural cold. Frost creeps along the floorboards, and the walls seem to stretch into endless hallways. Whispering voices echo, calling names or recounting past tragedies that never happened to the listener, yet feel uncomfortably real. Shadows shift in the corners, sometimes forming humanoid shapes, sometimes twisting into grotesque figures. One traveler claimed to see a reflection in the window, himself, yet pale, frozen, eyes hollow, silently screaming. In 1978, a group of local hunters dared to spend a night inside. As darkness fell, the air became heavier, and the faint light of a dying lantern flickered uncontrollably. The walls groaned as if alive, and the floorboards creaked beneath invisible footsteps. One hunter vanished when investigating a shadow that moved against the light. The others escaped at dawn, shaken, convinced the cabin itself had tried to swallow their souls. Locals now warn, the shivering cabin does not merely trap the living, it feeds on fear, bending time and space inside its frozen walls. Those who linger too long risk becoming a permanent part of its icy interior, wandering endlessly in a prison of frost and shadows. Even today, hikers report faint lantern lights from the cabin during blizzards, accompanied by the sound of whispered names. Some claim that if you approach, the door may creak open, inviting you inside, but once you step through, the warmth never returns. If you ever find yourself near the shivering cabin in Haines during a winter night, do not enter. Do not answer the whispers, because the shivering cabin waits patiently, and some who cross its threshold never leave the frost behind.
Number 9. The Vanishing Dock, Haines' Forgotten Pier. Along the frozen waterfront of Haines,
there is a dilapidated pier that locals call the Vanishing Dock. At first glance, it looks like any abandoned structure: rotting wood, rusted nails, and a few broken lanterns swaying in the wind. But at night, it becomes something else entirely. A place where people disappear without a trace. The story began in 1941 when a fisherman named Jonas Klein tied his boat to the dock during a late winter storm. The next morning, the boat was gone, and Jonas was never seen again. Over time, similar incidents occurred. Travelers reported walking along the dock at night, only to feel the structure stretch farther than possible. Shadows lurked along the boards, and the water below reflected distorted, ghostly images of figures that were nowhere to be found. Those who walk the Vanishing Dock describe strange sensations almost immediately. The wood feels unnaturally cold, the air thick with fog and whispers. Some report hearing distant splashes, as if people are falling into the water, but when they look over the edge, there is nothing but black, still water. A few have glimpsed shadowy figures walking the pier, only for them to vanish when approached. In 1973, a group of teenagers dared to explore the dock during a full moon. As they crossed, one of them felt a tug on his ankle, icy hands gripping him. When he screamed, the others spun around to see him being pulled toward the edge by an unseen force. The pier seemed to stretch endlessly, bending impossibly over the water, and the fog thickened into shapes, ghostly fishermen and lost travelers reaching out silently. They fled, but one of the teenagers swore he could still hear the dock creaking and groaning, as if alive, calling him to return. Locals insist the Vanishing Dock doesn't just exist, it hunts those who linger too long. It bends reality, trapping people in endless loops, showing them reflections of themselves that seem almost real, but twisted, dark, and beckoning. Even today, visitors report faint lantern lights flickering along the boards at night, and whispers carried across the water calling their names. Some who step onto the pier claim to feel a pull, as if the dock itself wants them to join the countless lost souls trapped within its icy grip. If you ever find yourself near the Haines waterfront after dark, do not approach the Vanishing Dock. Do not step onto the boards, because the dock waits patiently, and some who tread its length never make it back to shore. Number 10. The Whispering Forest, Haines Silent Woods. Just beyond the outskirts of Haines lies a dense forest that locals call the Whispering Forest. By day, it's quiet and still, but at night, travelers report hearing whispers carried on the wind, voices that speak directly to your fears, regrets, or secrets. Those who follow the sounds often vanish, leaving only faint footprints in the snow. The story traces back to the early 1900s when trappers and hunters reported strange events in the woods. People would enter the forest and hear soft voices calling their names, only to emerge hours or days later confused and changed, sometimes missing entirely. Some described seeing shadowy figures between the trees, vanishing when approached, while others swore the trees themselves seemed to move, subtly guiding or trapping them deeper into the forest. In 1954, a group of surveyors entered the Whispering Forest to map the area. As night fell, the whispers grew louder, forming sentences in voices that seemed eerily familiar. "Turn back. You are not welcome. Follow, follow." The team reported seeing figures standing motionless between the trunks, shadows stretching unnaturally long. One surveyor vanished after stepping toward a flicker of light, leaving behind only a trail of footprints that abruptly ended in fresh snow.
The remaining team escaped, but all claimed they were haunted for years, often hearing the same whispers even in the safety of town. Witnesses described the forest as almost alive. Paths seem to twist and loop back on themselves. The whispers are persuasive, coaxing travelers into unseen areas. Some claim the trees groan like old wood, and the wind carries low moans, warning outsiders away. Locals believe the whispering forest traps souls, keeping them forever among the trees, feeding off fear and curiosity. Even today, hikers report hearing their own names called from deep within the forest at night. Shadows move just beyond the line of sight, and sometimes faint silhouettes appear between the trunks, watching silently. If you ever wander near the whispering forest after dark, heed the warnings. Do not follow the whispers. Do not stray from the path, because the forest waits patiently, and some who listen too closely are never seen again.
Number 11. The Lighthouse Keeper's Curse. Haynes' Eternal Watch. Perched on the northern cliffs of Haynes, the old lighthouse has long been abandoned, yet locals warn that its light still shines on stormy nights, guided by a spectral presence. They call it the Lighthouse Keeper's Curse, and claim the ghost of the last keeper roams the tower, trapped in an endless vigil. The story begins in 1927, when the lighthouse keeper, Edgar Vance, mysteriously vanished during a winter storm. Some say he tried to save a ship caught in the treacherous waters, but instead of succumbing to the waves, he became trapped between life and death. Fishermen report that even decades later, the lighthouse beam flashes when no one is there, sweeping the water as if guiding vessels that no longer exist. Visitors to the lighthouse at night describe eerie experiences. Cold gusts sweep through the empty rooms, doors slam without wind, and the spiral staircase creaks under invisible footsteps. Some report seeing a shadowy figure pacing the upper balcony, lantern in hand, staring into the darkness, silently watching. Whispered warnings fill the air. "Don't leave. Stay with me." In 1963, a young couple exploring the cliffs tried to reach the lighthouse during a foggy night. As they climbed, they felt an invisible hand brush against their shoulders, guiding them toward the tower. Inside, the spiral stairs seemed to stretch endlessly, and the lantern at the top glowed unnaturally bright. They claimed to see figures in old maritime uniforms standing motionless, watching them before vanishing into the walls. By dawn, the couple escaped, pale and trembling, swearing that the lighthouse itself seemed alive, keeping its keeper and all who approached trapped in time. Locals insist the lighthouse keeper's curse does not merely haunt, it binds souls to its eternal watch. Those who linger too long may find themselves trapped in the tower, pacing endlessly, unable to leave, their eyes forever scanning the dark waters. Even today, on stormy nights, the lighthouse light can be seen flickering against the cliffs, and faint footsteps echo inside the abandoned walls. Some swear they hear the keeper's voice, carried by the wind, calling out in sorrowful tones. If you ever approach the lighthouse after dark, do not climb the stairs, do not follow the light, because the lighthouse keeper's curse waits, patient and eternal, and some who enter are never released from the tower.